I'm back again, doing the thing that I say I hate. I'm just dunking on a video game. This is a very, very negative video about the latest Call of Duty, Black Ops 7. We just completed the entire campaign in one sitting, in co-op, trying to have the best experience we possibly could. It took about 4 hours, and even though I went into it saying, I'm going to try to enjoy this, I'm going to try to have the best time, and at the beginning, I kept that up for a little while, I just couldn't do it, because this is one of the worst Call of Duty campaigns ever made. It's absolutely atrocious, and if anything, I think it's interesting in just how bad the decisions behind it were. I would love a documentary about what's been happening at Treyarch over the last 5 years or so, however long it's been since, I guess, Black Ops 4, which I quite enjoyed. I would love to know what's been happening at that company that led to this. Now, a few disclaimers before I really get into the meat of this video. First of all, I'm only talking about campaign and a little bit about endgame. I've only played a tiny bit of zombies. I quite enjoyed what I saw. It just felt like Black Ops 6, but the new map seemed interesting. I haven't played any multiplayer since the beta. Those modes might absolutely be great, and I'll have a completely different opinion about those. I am going to be doing the zombies Easter egg tomorrow with Mr. Dalek, JD, and Craig and Jakey. So if you want to check that out, I'll be live at 6 o'clock on Friday. As soon as the Easter egg goes live, we'll be streaming. Also, just because I don't like this video game and I think it's terrible, and I'm going to spend a bit of time in this video explaining why I think it's so terrible and how weird it is that it is this bad, if you're enjoying the game, that's not a problem. You can like this game, I can not like this game, and both of those things are perfectly okay. I'm not attacking you for liking this game or anything like that. Whenever I've said anything negative about a couple of different games lately, and they'll remain nameless for now, some people seem to have taken it as a personal attack. I don't mean that at all. I just think this game is absolutely atrocious. A few days ago, I made a video about what I expected from this campaign, and I set out all the reasons I was worried that it was going to be really bad. And all of the things I said in that video came true. Like, every single thing I was saying was going to happen with this, I'm pretty sure all of it was spot on. So it's worth going back and watching that. Now, the final disclaimer, I am going to spoil bits of this campaign. I'm sort of not going to spoil the overall story, and you'll see why as we get into it. But I am going to assume that you've played the campaign or you're not interested in the campaign from now on. So if you're sensitive to spoilers, go play it first, then come back and watch this video afterwards. Although, I heartily recommend you don't go play this campaign. Trust me, getting to endgame is not worth it. So, the setup, we were playing 3 players in co-op all the way through this campaign. It's people that I've played with before. Weirdly, when you start the campaign, by default it has squad fill on, which seems a really strange way to play a campaign, to play it with randomers who you might not be talking to. And also there were some weird glitches throughout where it seemed like we were somehow in a party with other people. We couldn't see them in our game, but we could hear them over voice chat, like see their names appear and actually hear them while we were watching cutscenes, which was super odd. But anyway, we were playing 3 of us. There's no difficulty settings in this campaign at all. There's no veteran to select from or anything like that. So we were just playing the normal way it goes. I think probably what it's doing is it scales up the enemy health based on how many people you have in your squad, because with 3 of us, a lot of the enemies were massive bullet sponges. I assume if you play solo with squad fill off, the enemies will be a lot weaker. Otherwise, this would take absolutely ages. And the beginning of the campaign actually wasn't bad. Like I said, I went in trying really hard to like it, because I was just talking about this before, saying it's a lot more fun to like things. I think people are more interesting when they're talking about things they like. It's nice to be passionate about stuff. I wanted to give it its absolute best chance, because it would be more fun for me if I was enjoying the game. But I struggled with that. But like I said, the first part of it was actually pretty promising. The first mission makes sense, like you're in there to go grab something out of a quantum computer or something. But fine, you know, it's a basic mission where you're just infiltrating something and trying to get out again. and you get these weird abilities and stuff which are kind of new for Call of Duty. I mean, I know we've seen them in different modes, but at least in the campaign it felt kind of new. And there's actually kind of boss fights and stuff which seemed really interesting for Call of Duty. So for the first couple of missions I was kind of invested in this, and I thought, oh, okay, it's a little bit campy, a little bit cheesy, the acting's not so good and the writing and stuff like that. But it was fun playing co-op with my friends, and it was fun doing some stuff that felt very strange for a Call of Duty campaign, like doing all of these boss fights. To be honest, it felt a bit more like zombies boss fights than anything. But shortly after that, I would say after the second mission, it all falls apart in basically every way imaginable. All the things that you kind of give it the benefit of the doubt for in those first couple of missions just come back to bite you. You just start realizing that every single aspect of this campaign is just designed badly. Like, it's not a super fun experience beyond playing something that's very, very stupid in co-op, because anything with friends is fun. Like, I remember hearing a comedian talking about this, about someone saying, oh, this is a fun activity with friends. And it's like, yeah, every activity is fun with friends. You could be throwing tea bags into a glass, and if you're doing it by yourself, it might be a bit depressing. If you're doing it with friends, you'd have an absolute great time. And that's where the only real joy in this campaign comes from, is that you can blast through it with some friends. And even then, I would say it's not fun enough to sustain 4 hours of gameplay. Like, the campaign, even at the very, very short 4 hours, is entirely too long. But let's start getting specific about some of the things that are wrong with this. First of all, story-wise, narratively, it doesn't make any sense at all. A lot of what happens in the game is meant to be in the characters' heads. So there is the cradle, it's messing with them, it's messing with their perception, it's messing with what's going on, and it keeps throwing them into either memories or twisted landscapes created out of stuff in their mind. And the characters know this is going on, and they still consistently are like surprised to see dead people appear and treat them as if they might be real, even people that they absolutely know are dead and have talked about how they know are dead. They're also constantly surprised to be like reliving memories or missions, and they treat them as if they now need to go and do the thing that they were originally doing on the mission, which again, this is all in their heads and they know that. But Treyarch does this just so they can do references to missions from past Black Ops games. And this is something we've seen in like movies from Hollywood lately and TV shows all over the place, where, you know, they are sequels to something or reboots of something, and rather than coming up with their own new good ideas, instead they just reference ideas from the previous entries in a franchise. And this game heavily relies on that. Like, there are so many scenes from mostly Black Ops 2, but some from Black Ops 1, and all of them are just slightly less interesting versions of them, slightly less well done versions of them. There's even a point where you're playing through a section of Black Ops 1, and looking at how simple all of the level geometry suddenly looks, it feels like maybe they actually loaded the level from Black Ops 1. Like, suddenly a lot of stuff doesn't seem to work as smoothly as it does in the rest of the game, and it definitely doesn't look as good as it does in the rest of the game. And it's not like a retro throwback where you're going back to that age or anything like that. It's just literally the level geometry looks like it's the same level from Black Ops 1, but they've changed load of the enemies as if they couldn't be bothered to create sort of NPCs or AI or whatever models that would fit the time period. So instead, it's just all the same enemies that you've been fighting against in the rest of the game, just put into this level from Black Ops 1. It's super weird, and it doesn't make any sense at all. And this happens all the way through. Like, you play through scenes or experiences that you had in those games, and it's just a worse version of it with the Black Ops 7 enemies. The same enemies you fight over and over again, a lot of which are actually just taken from zombies. Remember when people got annoyed in Black Ops 6 that they just kept on reusing enemies that we'd seen before, particularly in the zombies mode? Well, yeah, the campaign does that a lot. And speaking of the enemies are all absolutely horrific bullet sponges. This doesn't mean the game's difficult, it's really not. I think we died once in the 4 hours we were playing through it. You know, we went down quite a lot, but you can always just res each other, which makes it much, much easier. But just the enemies are really annoying to fight against. Remember all of those cool sequences that you would have in previous Call of Duty games, where you'd be moving through an area and just like one-shotting loads of people, and you were really accurate, and it meant maybe you could stealth through a section, or maybe you could just sort of fly through something and it made you feel like an absolute badass. There's none of that in this, because all of the enemies just have an absolute ton of health. You will literally be using an entire magazine to burn down a single enemy, and they're not interesting to fight against. They're absolutely dumb as bricks. They'll often just walk into walls or walk into nothing. Sometimes I saw them just punching the air, doing nothing. It almost feels like they couldn't find a way to make the enemies engaging to fight against, and they couldn't make them, you know, intelligent in any way. They didn't give them any kind of interesting behavior, so they just made sure there's a lot of enemies and they have a lot of health. So your biggest enemy is just boredom. I think every time we were going down, it was more often than not just because we were messing around trying something out, or jumping off walls, or running into a group of enemies because we were very bored. Like, that was it. There's no challenge to these enemies. And now they do an even weirder thing where the whole campaign is set up a bit like something like Warzone or DMZ, where you are constantly given like upgrades and you're constantly looting weapons. There's just these random weapon caches all over. Even if you're in the dream sequences, just random weapon caches dotted around. Some of them will have kill streaks, some of them will have tacticals and lethals, some of them will have actual new weapons, and occasionally there's an upgrade bench where you will upgrade your weapon from like white to green, then green to blue, then blue to purple, and so on. And occasionally the game will also tell you you're now doing double damage, so you think, oh cool, this is going to be awesome, I'm now going to be flying through the game. Absolutely not. I'm almost positive that whenever it tells you you now do double damage, it doubles the enemy health, because it doesn't seem to have any effect at all. Same when you increase the weapon rarity, no difference at all. I didn't notice any guns having like more attachments. I didn't notice the guns being more powerful or anything like that. None of the guns feel interesting in the game at all. I noticed that in the beta when we were playing multiplayer, but in the campaign it really hits home because you try so many different weapons. I didn't find a single gun that I thought was interesting or fun to use. They're all just, you know, normal Call of Duty guns, completely accurate, very fast rates of fire. They all seem to do about the same amount of damage. I couldn't tell you the name of a single gun that I enjoyed or really remembered from the campaign, and I finished playing the campaign about an hour ago. It's just completely forgettable. But anyway, yeah, you level up the guns, you get double damage, and the enemies just get stronger, so it doesn't matter at all. I've got no idea why they decided to do that. Like, surely at some point they were thinking, okay, we've got this cool system where you get double damage for no reason really as you're playing through the game, or we're going to increase the weapon rarity. That should make the players feel strong, at least for like the next fight. But it literally doesn't. Like, you go into the next fight and the enemies will take just as many bullets to kill as they did at the beginning of the game, if not maybe a few more. There's one boss enemy in particular that's kind of like a mini boss. It's just an enemy from a zombies game, and it takes absolutely ages to kill them. And again, we just got bored fighting it because it was such a bullet sponge that all we were doing was just sort of moving around, shooting it in the face over and over again. The abilities you have do start out fun. Like, you can see there's some kind of design in the levels at the beginning of the game to make them interesting. Like, you unlock a super jump ability, which is very cheesy, very silly. The people in it seem to completely take in their stride, because I think you get it in like a dream sequence, but then you have it in the real world as well. I don't understand it. But anyway, the super jump, you start off with a platforming section, so you actually have to use the super jump to progress. Kind of interesting. You get a grappling hook, and then there's a grappling section, which is actually kind of the same as the super jump section, but anyway, you have to do it to progress. And then the game just seems to kind of give up on it. There's like some bit with the active camo where I think it tries to do a stealth section, but maybe we were just bad at it, but we couldn't stealth through any of the sections. We just immediately alerted the entire level right at the beginning of every one of those missions, and then the game would just be like, oh, that's time to go loud, and then you just play it like a normal level. And we never saw any single moment of the game where it felt like you were meant to be stealthing. The abilities that you get for the rest of the game, I think there's like 8 of them or 9 of them, and they're all just stupid. They're all just like a bit rubbish, a bit boring. The grappling hook was very, very cool. I really like that. It feels good to use. Every other ability in the game just seemed really, really tedious. Some of them are kill streaks. Some of them are like tactical things, like, you know, it's a bullet shield, but you're constantly moving through levels, so that's not particularly useful, I guess, if you want to revive someone. But then there's another ability that just lets you revive everyone like instantly, so that's completely stupid. There's a hand cannon, which will take like 3 shots to fight a soldier towards the end of the game. Some of the soldiers are really strong, but there's like massive VTOL aircraft that you can destroy those in 2 shots. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. The abilities just feel super out of place and weird. And then another massive complaint that I had that I expected going into it, because I think it's been a little bit of a kind of pattern over the last few Call of Duty games, is that there's no real big set pieces. You know, there's no exciting moments. Think of like all those exciting times in previous Call of Duty games, you know, like firing the guns from the AC-130 and it being super quiet and sort of eerie. Or in the Black Ops games, having things like, you know, the spy missions in Black Ops Cold War, where you're sort of looking over Checkpoint Charlie and trying to sneak around the enemies there. Or when you're going through the KGB headquarters and it's all very cool and there's like dialogue options and stuff. Or that, you know, the helicopter gunner sections where you're in Vietnam and you're firing outside of stuff like that, or you're flying a helicopter around attacking bases. There's nothing like that. Like, nothing at all. The gameplay does not change across the entire game. There's one mission where you start off a little bit different, but it very quickly descends into just being exactly the same thing. It feels like they couldn't find a way to make those things work in co-op, so they just didn't bother at all. They just said, no, actually, we're just going to have you running through room after room, filled with the same enemies. You know, sometimes they're robots, sometimes they're troops with loads of armor and sometimes shields, and then sometimes they're like zombie enemies. And we're just going to have room after room after room where you fight through loads and loads and loads of them. And sometimes there's some cool visuals. Like, genuinely, some of the maps look kind of cool. But outside of maybe the boss fights, there's nothing interesting. And the boss fights get worse as well. It feels like they front load a load of the boss fights in the first half of the game that are kind of a bit interesting. I would say they feel like very mid-tier zombies boss fights at best. But they're at least a bit interesting because they're unusual for a Call of Duty campaign. And then by the end, you're just fighting the same enemies over again, where the bosses are just, you know, a person that you shoot and then they disappear and appear somewhere else. And you keep doing that over and over again. Or there's just an enemy that has absolutely tons of health and you have to whittle it down. Or, you know, a VTOL that you have to break its shield or wait for its shield to disappear before you attack it. Just stuff like that over and over again. And it is hard to express just how creatively empty the entire experience is. Like, you're running through multiplayer levels a lot of the time, or bits of the Warzone map, you know, the new Warzone map Avalon, it's going to be used for Blackout or whatever, but it's obviously, you know, designed for Warzone. You're just going through those sequences again and again, or previous campaign missions from the other games, but like I said, bad, ugly versions of them. It feels really soulless, like you're not playing something that's been crafted to give you a good experience. And you can see this like throughout every aspect of the game. The music is super generic, super bland. Remember when we used to have like composers talking about their soundtracks when like Vanguard came out and things like that? I can't imagine there's a composer that's going to be super excited to talk about this one. There's quite a cool cutscene at the very beginning where the character models all look great, and then there's one at the very end of the game, and everything in between just looks super bland. There are some pretty environments, there's pretty levels occasionally, there's a couple of cool like vistas where you look out and you see something that looks kind of cool, but that's it, you know, it looks kind of cool, but you don't get to interact with it, you don't get to do anything with it. There's a couple of cool moments in the game where characters do something that looks kind of fun, but it happens just in a cutscene. You know, it's not something that you get to take part in. It's not something you get to experience at all. None of the characters in the game change or develop or have any real interesting motivations or anything like that. There's no like shocking twists or turns or anything. It's just a list of kind of references to other Black Ops games and you just going through a load of gunfights. And that's it. Some of the voice actors, I got the impression in a couple of the levels, it felt like they were trying a bit, but it really feels like a lot of them just phoned their lines in. All of them have some absolutely atrocious lines, and I don't know if it's the performance or the script, but they're just unbelievably terrible. Like, it made us laugh while we were playing at just how badly delivered a lot of the voice lines are, which is obviously a little bit embarrassing. I'd argue one of the most creative moments in the game that had us laughing a lot was there's a bit where you're running around and killing plants. Yep, that's right, in a Call of Duty campaign you are killing plants, and when I threw an axe at a plant it made a really funny noise.
You see any? Shoot them.
That was maybe the most creative thing. I would say it's not good. You know, it doesn't fit in the game at all, in the narrative or anything like that. The tone is super weird, but it surprised me a bit and went like, oh, so that's a weird decision that some artist made. That's about as interesting as the whole thing gets. There's tons of weird decisions that imply that any creative ideas were thrown out of the window and just rushed to make the level work. Like there's one boss fight where you trigger an EMP at the end of it to disable the boss's shield or whatever. And you're doing that in the middle of Tokyo, and none of the lights on the level go out or anything like that. And the thing that you're disabling using the EMP, you have another thing that's exactly the same that comes to pick you up to take you out of the level that's just got a slightly different paint job. And it's like, surely the thing we just set off would have destroyed that too. Like all the characters before you set off, like, are we sure we're ready to do this? Are you sure you're willing to do this? Is this like absolutely what we have to do? And they're all like, yeah, let's go for it. Then you do it and it just has like no effect whatsoever. Like it just doesn't matter at all. And you're actually using it to fight a boss as if, oh, you desperately need this to fight the boss, even though you'd actually been about to kill the boss in the first place. It was just, oh, it got to this limit of health, so now we're going to decide that you absolutely need to use this EMP. And then you use it and just nothing happens. It doesn't have any effect at all. You think even a game from like the early 2010s or maybe even before that, if you'd triggered an EMP in the middle of a city like Tokyo, you'd see all the lights go off. You'd see some like, you know, incredible scene where it shows the impact of what you've just done. But there's none of that. There's none of that in the entire game. Nothing you do seems to have consequence. I think there's one bit where it flashes up on screen that due to the consequences of what's going on in the game, like 270 million people have died. And the only indication you ever get of that in the rest of the game is occasionally you see a civilian corpse dotted around. And that's kind of it. And that's kind of how they've developed the stakes, is they just put a number on a screen saying, oh, this is killing 270 million people, or it's going to kill 270 million people, I don't know. It's not even super clear how it's going to kill all of those people. It's just something they've told you as if it's a way of artificially raising the stakes because they couldn't be bothered to think of an interesting way to do that within the story. But I've been rambling long enough in this. I think it's clear what happened with this game. I get the distinct impression that Black Ops 6 and 7 were just made as one single game and not a particularly good game. And then at some point a decision was made, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, that they were going to split the content over 2 years, and they had to scramble to make it seem like the two games were separate enough and different enough. And I think all of the campaign was done for Black Ops 6. I think Black Ops 7, the whole campaign must have been very hastily organized. It was obviously early enough that they could get some celebrity voice actors in, or at least got them to do it over the phone or something, because like I said, they are definitely phoning it in at times, like it's super bad. But it wasn't long enough for them to make a coherent game with some sort of like real design philosophy. And Endgame is also terrible. Like, some of you might think, oh, I'll play through the campaign so I get to Endgame. I honestly wouldn't bother. I'll probably do another video about Endgame because I know a lot of people who watch my videos really enjoyed MWZ or DMZ and are excited about Endgame. I'm sorry to tell you, it is absolutely awful. It is 100% worse than DMZ or MWZ. But I think they had to throw something in because the campaign was so short, because the campaign's so featureless, to try and pad it out and make it feel like it was a whole different game. And you can see in Zombies, you know, what we're getting feels like just a new map for Zombies. The multiplayer, again, maybe it's good. I haven't enjoyed what I've played with the beta before. Maybe some people are going to really enjoy that and find it super different. I personally don't think so. I think because there's a lack of new ideas, there's a lack of vision, there's a lack of kind of substance for this game, that's probably why they've done these things like removed skill-based matchmaking from the multiplayer, even though they released a white paper like a year ago explaining how they'd done tests removing it before and it definitely hurt player retention, and it seemed to be something that negatively affected, what was it, like 95% of players or something like that. And, you know, they're doing the persistent lobbies and all this stuff. They've gone back on a lot of things that aren't to do with the game being good. They're just things that will appease the community for a little bit and hopefully get them to buy the game, because I don't think they had a game. I really think this was cobbled together just out of scraps. And I don't think it's like, oh, if they hadn't have had to make these two games, then Black Ops 6 would have been good. I honestly don't. I genuinely think they had one very mediocre to maybe even a bad game, and then they were forced to split it up into 2 games and ended up making one game that I still think was kind of mediocre. Black Ops 6 has some stuff that I like about it, but I don't think it's particularly interesting. And then Black Ops 7 is just, I think it's just embarrassing. Like, I 100% would not recommend people buy this game at all. Like, I got it for free. Massive thank you to Activision for sending me a copy of Call of Duty, the Vault Edition, for free. I wouldn't buy this, and I wouldn't ever recommend anyone to buy this game. Again, maybe the multiplayer on zombies is good, maybe that's enough to carry you, but if you're at all thinking about buying it for endgame or for the campaign, that would be a massive mistake. Now, all of that being said, I do want to end on one vaguely positive note. I don't think it's as bad as Modern Warfare 3. I think the Modern Warfare 3, the new one, the reboot one, I think that was a worse game just because that was incredibly just boring. There was nothing interesting about it. It had like nothing to recommend it at all. At least this you can play co-op. It's kind of silly fun with your friends for at least a couple of hours at the beginning. And there's a lot of super weird stuff in it. And, you know, for some people, it's worth playing just to see how weird this campaign is. Modern Warfare 3 didn't even have that. They both lack a story that makes sense and, you know, development in characters, good writing, good acting, and all of that kind of stuff. But at least this one's weird. Anyway, if you want to see my video about Endgame, make sure you subscribe, turn your notifications on. Sorry to be making these negative videos, but I'm just genuinely astounded at how bad this game was. If you have any questions about it, let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike. And I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.
You see any? Shoot 'em.